At James Wood Regional High, Meg and her classmates were about to play dodgeball. Captain Connie handpicked everyone except Meg, leaving her out once again. As the game began, balls came hurtling toward Meg from every direction. She was soon sprawled across the floor in a tangled heap, a visible target. School had become unbearable for Meg. She couldn't bear the thought of enduring another semester of exclusion and humiliation. Her friend Ruth suggested that, if she hated it so much, she could join her on a trip to Paris. Ruth had always dreamed of going, and the idea intrigued Meg. She asked her parents for permission and promised that she would cover all expenses from her savings. After some hesitation, they agreed. Landing in Paris was thrilling for both Meg and Ruth. As they exited the airport, a man approached, offering to share a cab. After helping them settle in, the man discreetly made a call, mentioning fresh arrivals and rating them 3 out of 10. He didn't stay long, and the girls went up to their room, excitedly discussing the days ahead. While Meg was on the phone with Peter, suddenly, loud footsteps thundered down the hall. The door burst open, and masked men stormed in. Meg screamed as she saw Ruth dragged out of the room. Panicking, she dropped her phone, and Peter's voice could be heard shouting on the other end. Following his desperate advice, she crawled under the bed, holding her breath. The men soon found her and pulled her out, despite her attempts to escape. The last thing Peter heard was the phrase "Drakkar Noir" before the line went silent. Back in Quahog, Lois received devastating news. The FBI informed her that Meg had been abducted, likely by a human trafficking ring. They explained that if she wasn't found within 96 hours, she would disappear forever. Brian, shocked and determined, decided to take matters into his own hands. He packed his things, and Stewie, ever the loyal sidekick, joined him on the rescue mission to Paris. Trying to piece together what had happened, Stewie played a recording of the kidnapper's voice from the last phone call with Peter. When Brian and Stewie arrived in Paris, they went straight to the apartment where Meg had been staying. The place looked like it had been ravaged by a tornado. The two worked methodically, hoping to pick up Meg's trail. Using Google Earth, they traced her path from the airport and located the man who had first tipped off the kidnappers. The duo rushed to the airport, where they found the man scoping out his next target. Brian and Stewie approached him with a photo of Meg and Ruth, hoping to intimidate him into talking. The man recognized the girls and, panicked, bolted. He darted through the crowded airport, leaping over obstacles, somersaulting off railings, and making every possible attempt to lose his pursuers. He scaled a building, only to slip and fall, landing directly in the path of an oncoming bus. The impact was fatal. However, searching his belongings, they discovered a scrap of paper with an address on it. Determined, Brian and Stewie headed to the address, hoping it would lead them to Meg. They knew they needed to be careful and devised a plan to enter the building undercover. Donning disguises as cologne salesmen, they strolled inside, keeping their eyes peeled for anything suspicious. In a back room, they found 3 men discussing a recent shipment. One voice sounded eerily familiar. Stewie confirmed it matched the voice in the phone recording. Without hesitation, Stewie launched himself at the man, pinning him down as he demanded answers. After some aggressive questioning, the man revealed that the girls were kept upstairs, awaiting further instructions. Racing to the indicated room, Brian and Stewie burst in, only to find Meg was already gone. A captive in the room informed them that she had been taken to an auction. Brian and Stewie hurried to the Grand Hotel where the auction was taking place. Stealing glances at the well-dressed men entering the venue, they devised a new plan. Brian disguised himself as a wealthy sheikh, with Stewie posing as his slave girl, in a bid to infiltrate the event. However, their plan was foiled. Security discovered their ruse and threw them into chains. From their holding cell, they could see the stage where the auction was underway. In the spotlight, they spotted Meg, terrified and alone. Though they managed to free themselves from the chains, by the time they reached the stage, Meg had already been sold. On board, Meg was forced into a dimly lit room. He introduced himself as a sheikh who had purchased her for his son, Faisal. To Meg's shock, Faisal turned out to be a strikingly handsome young man. Someone who looked exactly like the charming prince she'd imagined in her dreams. Just as Faisal was about to propose to Meg, Stewie and Brian stormed in. A scuffle ensued, with Stewie managing to shoot Faisal. They whisked Meg away from the boat before anyone could stop them. Back in Quahog, Meg was tearfully reunited with her family. Lois hugged her tightly, grateful to have her daughter back. Peter, deeply relieved, finally put aside his usual antics, realizing the danger they had narrowly escaped.